Perfect. Well, it's wonderful to meet you, Jocelyn. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Thank you, Joe.
You bet. So, I want to get into your life as a speaker and an author. And before we do that, one of the more momentous shifting things that happened in our lives was surviving this pandemic 4.5 years ago. How much of that has reverberated into your life even today?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's funny you asked that because the my latest book, which I know we're going to talk about, Ticket to Madland, the events that I describe in that book took place during the pandemic, during
Yeah.
the worst part of the pandemic here in Santa Fe. That was the summer and fall of 2020. So, in terms of how that has reverberated to today, I would say that uh, we can get into this later, but there were certainly links between between COVID and what happened to me. So in a way, it's partly responsible for that whole experience, and then later on the book.
So, talk to me about the book. Give me a kind of an idea how the COVID backbone became this narrative. Talk to me a little bit about the story.
Yeah. Yeah, so the book is a memoir. It's a mental illness memoir. So it's about how I fell into a very severe, life-threatening mental illness. What would have been called in the 1960s probably a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
But it was, much more, for me, much more dire than what nervous breakdown sounds like. I mean, it really was life-threatening. It was looking back on it, I can now see, though I couldn't see at the time, that it was really a confluence of four different things. One was an underlying anxiety disorder that I'd had for basically my whole life. Two was a set of hormonal imbalances that came along with perimenopause. Three was a small fiber neuropathy, which is a type of nerve pain or nerve disorder that I developed, and then the fourth perhaps was COVID, although I have no way of really being sure about that because there were no tests at the time. There were no tests. There was no real way to know. But looking back on it, I suspect that it was those four things all coming together in kind of a perfect storm
Yeah.
that created this crazy kind of vertigo that had me feeling like I was on a boat 24/7.
Wow.
So an unusual type of vertigo that was very scary and very distressing. And then that led to this sort of spiral of anxiety, insomnia, pain, and down, down, down I went until after many adventures, I ended up in a locked ward, a psych ward for 2 weeks, and began recovery. So I did recover, good
Yeah.
news, and got out, and here I am today.
Well, the thing about writing about your life, especially something that's painful like that, is when you have to rehash it. Like the pond is completely clear, everything's settled, but when you do that, everything just gets rumbled and all that. How hard was it to survive looking in that mirror again? Or was it cathartic? Now that you look back, was there levels of catharsis?
Yeah, great question. It was neither painful nor cathartic, really.
Okay.
It was something else. It was so I mean I'm a writer, just to put that out there. So when I was in the psych ward, we were allowed to email or have our phones for 10 minutes a day in the evening. And as I was on the way to recovery, I would be emailing people. And I remember one of the nurses saying to me, oh, I see you're emailing a lot, in your time when you have your phone. And I said, yeah, 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 I am. And she said, well, that's really stressful, isn't it? And I said, well, no, because I'm a writer. That's what I like to do.
Yeah.
So it's not stressful.
Sure.
It makes me feel good to write. So the process of writing the book was really for me a process of taking this truly hellacious experience that was completely out of control, not fun in any way, and shaping it into something that I hope is not only useful to others to read, but also enjoyable, strange as that sounds. And I think I've succeeded in that because people have told me that I use a lot of humor and, tell a lot of, funny slash interesting stories. So it was a way of taking this horrible, horrible experience and turning it into something beautiful.
I was watching, I'm watching a series about the O.J. Simpson thing on Netflix. And the reason why I bring this up is I'm watching it because from a historical perspective, I've forgotten a lot of it. And now that we've pulled back and we can look at it in a different lens, it's there was a part there where Ron Goldman's sister was in there, and she sits down in the chair and she's just like, "I'm only doing this because I want to prevent this from happening again." And I think about what you're saying. Like there's a level of talking about these things that are difficult because you want to shed light on it because you want to help other human beings that could potentially go through that. So my question to you, bringing that anecdotally up through that story, is that a little bit why this has become a focal point for you to get out into the world?
Yeah, for sure. And it's been amazing to me how many colleagues and friends and strangers have come forward as I was as I was leading up to the publication of the book. I decided to do a sort of Charles Dickens thing and do a serialization of part of the book. So I was sending out episodes, little scenes from the book to my whole email list. And that was going on for about 5 months before publication. So I had these people reading the serial, and every week I would send out the episode, and I would get somebody who would reply back and say, I've been reading along with this, and I just have to tell you this is so exactly like what my fill in the blank wife, son, mother, or myself went through or is going through. It is astonishing to me. I mean, and I thought that, yeah, I knew that everybody, everybody has some, relation to somebody with mental illness. Very common. Something like 1/5 of, or 1/4 of people in the United States will experience mental illness in some way. But I did not realize how much people would relate to my weird story,
Yeah,
because I really thought that I was like, this is nuts. Like this is not something that anybody else would have experienced.
sure.
And lo and behold, there's a lot of people out there who've experienced just, yeah, heartbreaking, courageous, weird, funny stories of mental illness.
When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream?
Oh, well, I had several dreams. I wanted to be a dancer,
Okay.
and I did want to be a writer, actually.
Okay. So what was your favorite book? What was the seminal book that either made you want to write or made you want to read more?
Oh, well, that's a lot, but many, many, many books. But I was a big reader. But it's funny because the first real book, chapter book, if you will, that I read was Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
And that is the theme that I use. Because in all my books, I always have sort of a literary theme, and Alice in Wonderland is the theme for Ticket to Madland, because the way I experienced it was as if had fallen down a rabbit hole and gone into this different country, this strange different land that I couldn't get out of.
Yeah. At one point, a friend of mine was talking about, you know, uh, like advice he would give to young people that decided they either wanted to recreationally use drugs or drink. And his quote was, always keep the light on. No matter what you do, keep the light on. And my question to you is this: going through this time that you went through, you obviously kept the light on. You've rebounded, you're here, you've written a memoir, you're talking about it. And to keep the light on for all of us, proverbial, the proverbial light, we have to have shoulders to stand on. We have to have
Yeah.
heroes. We have to have inspirations. We have to have bedrocks. Who was that heroic force for you that allowed you to push through and be who you are and become who you are?
Yeah, the heroic force for me during that time is actually it's a character, it's me, but it's the sane me. So I talk about throughout the whole book, I have sort of dialogues between mad me and sane me. And sane me, I'm sure that a therapist might say, oh, well, you were, disassociating or something, but in fact, I was never like, I didn't hear voices. I wasn't psychotic or anything, but I always had this sort of separate part of me. I think some people might have experienced it as like a guardian angel or God or a higher power of some sort. For me, it was sort of like it was like this voice of sanity that persisted through almost the whole experience and was able to be like the observer, the witness,
Yeah.
if you will. And I found that, and I talk about this in the book at the end about one of the things I learned is that the power of that sane me or the witness is really extraordinary. It's I think one of the most powerful forces there is in the universe is that sane consciousness that is separate from whatever crazy stuff your brain is doing, because your mind, your brain is can just, go way off the rails in a very powerful and scary way. But there is always, in my experience, that little voice, the small, still voice of sanity, of reason, of courage. It's like the other metaphor I think about is the grit in an oyster, that
Yeah.
creates the pearl.
Uh-huh.
So you got that sand that is so painful, probably for the oyster, but it's turning into that pearl, and that's what that witness was like for me.
It's so interesting when you right before you said that metaphor, I was thinking about how it almost seems to me like the subconscious. Like the subconscious is the filtering of like say the 49ers that are trying to find the gold and they're going through the silt, and then eventually the gold's going to come out. And the subconscious is always there. That's why when we have these vivid dreams, like our subconscious takes all of these things and kind of rams it up against what we know to be true or what we know to be right, and it's the unfiltered truth. So no matter how crazy a dream is, or no matter how crazy that is, that's the voice. That's the sound that you only hear because your life is filtered through all of this. Because at the end of the day, we only use 10 to 15% of our brain. So that other 90%, 80% is just floating around, kind of sifting through it, but it's still there. I mean, it's still
Right.
a physical part of our world. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. What is it every day that gets you up, that motivates you to create, that motivates you to promote this memoir and to be who you are at the highest level? What is that for you every day?
Oh, I mean, for me as a creator, writer, artist, whatever it is, it's that it's just that desire to create true and beautiful things. Um, I can't really put it in a different way than that. People often say, "Oh, well, don't you want to make a difference in the world? Don't you want to make an impact?" Yes, I do, of course. I would love for people to read my books. I would love for people to find them useful, but at the end of the day, for me, and I think a lot of creative people relate to this. It's just the love of that creative process of wanting to create and the wonder that this is possible for human beings to do, all of us, whether it's making a meal or building a table or painting a painting or whatever it is that we're doing that is creative. It's just an extraordinary, um, lovely process that human beings engage in. And yeah, that's what gets me up.
Sometimes I wonder, like when I get next to an amusement park or like there's state fairs or these big, huge things that human beings do to distract ourselves. I'm just amazed at the lengths that we go to entertain ourselves.
Mm,
I mean, like even in a movie, when you see like behind the scenes green screen that takes hours and hours and all this choreography and all these little diodes put on people, that they're just doing like a 30-second scene, and the lengths that we go to as humans to
mm,
accomplish things, or even just to
mhm.
shoot a rocket up into space. It's like
Yeah.
there's always going to be that striving. There's always going to be that light that's going to be out there in the
Yeah,
world.
because it's so much more than, I mean, it is, entertaining ourselves to death or whatever that phrase was, but it's more than that. It's making meaning. I think. So for me in writing this book, it was to go back to what the first question you asked me, it was about making meaning, and meaning that I knew other people it would resonate for other people because I knew I could make it into something that wasn't just like, oh, well, that was weird, or, oh, how horrible, but, oh, how interesting, how, look at all these other, one of the things that my daughter advised me to do is she said, Mom, make the best memoirs are about the other people. They're not about the, I mean, of course they're about the narrator, but they're more about the other people. So that's what I tried to do with Ticket to Madland, is to make it about all the people that I met on my journey who were just, you know, some of them were kind of awful, a lot of them were wonderful. They were all interesting. They were all human, and just fascinating people. So I think that when we create um, things as humans, we're tapping into something that's very profoundly meaningful for us as human beings.
What great advice to focus on
Yeah,
others. I just have never
yeah,
thought about that. So let me ask you this. The one thing about life is it would be great if we could be Benjamin Buttons and we could live backwards and take all this accumulated wisdom, right? And then
yeah.
just kind of apply it through our lives as we get younger.
Hmm.
So with that said, if you had a dream tonight and you ran into a much younger version of you in your 20s, perhaps, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, what you've overcome and evolved into, and the wisdom you've gained along the way, what advice would you impart on that younger version of you?
Hmm. I would say that it, it it gets better and better.
Yeah.
The aging process. Um, I mean, I'm sure this isn't sadly not true for everybody, I'm sure, but I think for most of us, the more we age, the wiser we get, and the more that what I've called sane me, that sort of that pearl of wisdom and experience and strength, it just it builds.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say, just keep going, keep going, build that wisdom, build that experience, and it's all going to get better.
And there's no way to know that when you're young because you just have to be around long enough. You have to be on this planet, right? And
That's
then
right.
you realize it, and it's one of those nuggets that comes like the pearl.
Yeah.
So, of all of these things that you've done in your life and evolved into at this point, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Oh, well, I'm proudest of my daughter
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I mean, what can I say? It's having a child and just seeing that child grow up and be able to give you advice, like the advice she gave me about Mom, here's how the memoirs are about other people. Um, it's wonderful to see, and it's funny because I can't, if you're a parent, anybody who's a parent will know that you don't really have that much to do with how your kid grows up. I mean, they come out of the womb as they are, and certainly nurture plays a role, but they are who they are.
yeah,
But I think that's the wonderful thing, is that you're as a parent, you're not proud of this child in the same way that you might be proud of a book or a painting or whatever that you did. You're proud of them because, wow, just, look at this amazing person that, and yeah, I guess I created them, but boy, they're their own wonderful thing.
yeah. We kind of talked before we got on, and even after we got on about Santa Fe and how wonderful it is, and it's a creative incubator. Do you think living in Santa Fe, going through what you went through, helped you get through it versus being somewhere else, living somewhere else, or being in a different environment?
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, sure, it's Santa Fe is beautiful. Santa Fe is a great place to live. Uh, it, I think we carry our own, our world is carried around with us. I mean, I grew up in a Foreign Service family, so I grew up moving all over the world. So
Yeah,
for me, wherever you are, wherever your family is, that's home. So my parents would always say to me is wherever your family is, that's home. So Yeah, I'm not a big sort of, home. I'm a home is where the heart is person, not a home is where the I don't know, where the pretty stuff is.
Yeah, it was a long shot. I was just thinking energetically, sometimes there's
Yeah,
places that incubate a different vibe.
yeah.
So at the end of the day, after all of this that you've been through and evolved into at this point, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that reads your book, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. At this point in 2025, what's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Mm. I think that I am uh, a person who's been to Madland and back and is grateful. That's who I am. I am a grateful person who I don't like to say that you know, nothing bad will ever happen to me again. Obviously, bad things happen to us all the time, and who knows, maybe I'll slip down the rabbit hole again. But having been through this experience, through that experience, it's really given me just this absolute core of gratitude that that I'm here, that I have what I have, that I love have the people who I love, that I can do the things I do, and yeah, that's it.
So let's say your book gets adapted into a movie and an actress can play you.
Mm.
Who's the actress that's going to play your life story?
Ah, you know, I who I'm going to say is not, I don't know about my life story, but who, if the movie were about that,
Yeah, right.
about Ticket to Madland,
Yeah.
I'm going to say Elizabeth Moss.
Okay.
She is the lead actress in The Handmaid's Tale,
Yeah.
which I'm watching right now for the first time, and she just blows me
Yeah.
away with how she portrays that. Because she's on screen like, I don't know, 80% of the time or something.
Yeah.
She's got to carry the whole thing.
Yeah.
And just that ability that she has to portray this extreme suffering and extreme strength and also humor
Yeah.
all at the same time. I would love that.
Yeah, for sure. So, what do you like the best about living in Santa Fe, New Mexico?
Uh, do I like best? It's just a beautiful town.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I walk. I'm a big walker, and so I go out for a walk every day, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're kind of in I mean, it's relatively a new year. Are you hopeful? Are you like when you look at the world and you see everything that's going on, are you hopeful?
I am cautiously hopeful.
I get it.
I'm not happy with our current government
Yeah.
at all. Um, but back to that point about, ever since 2020, and I have a grateful heart. I can't help but I don't like to sort of look, I don't know, to the whole massive world as much anymore. I look at the specific things that are happening in my orbit,
Yeah.
which may sound selfish. I don't know, but that's just what I do. And yeah, I'm extremely hopeful about the things that are happening close to home.
I think we have to hold on to the hope. I think we can't let the forces that we know that genuinely are going to be bullyish and non-benevolent. We need to not allow that to chink our armor because
Yeah,
as we all know, in any phase of life, everything's cyclical. Things go around, come around, regimes come in and out and change. So, the last thing you want to do is let the bully break your spirit. That's
right.
not going to
Well, and
work.
there's so much we can do close to home as
Yeah.
well. I mean, that's where you make a difference, which is often what, when people say, "Oh, don't you want to, make an impact on the world?" Yes, I do, of course. And the older I get, the more I realize that the impact you're going to make is in unexpected ways closer to home.
Yeah.
What things that you don't know about. Well, I mean, with Ticket to Madland, just the people who I wouldn't have expected coming to me and saying, "Oh, this has really helped because I know this person whose son is going through the same thing, and so I gave him a copy." And that's very gratifying.
So I got to know as a speaker, what's the best speech you've ever witnessed?
Hmm. Best speech I've ever witnessed. Uh, I think it was a eulogy that a speaking of, things close to home, a eulogy that a friend of mine, an older gentleman, gave for his wife at her funeral. And he just talked very beautifully. He's a very good speaker. His name is John Agresto. Um, he's a longtime sort of luminary in the world of academia. And he talked in his eulogy about his relationship with his wife and how it was so much more than, all these things that the priest had said or whatever. But he said it was also so much less.
Yeah.
It was so much less. And he talked about just these small moments and how they would share breakfast together and they would do these small things together. It was just a very beautiful, beautiful eulogy.
Yeah, those are the best for sure. So, Ticket to Madland is your book. If anyone wants to pick it up or they're curious, they want to reach out, any of the other good business in your world, where do they go?
So you can go to my website, which is jocelynrdavis.com. So it's Jocelyn Davis with an R in the middle, jocelynrdavis.com, and you will see all my books there. I have six books so far. Most of them are about leadership. Well, they're all about leadership, really. And the latest one, Ticket to Madland, is there too.
It's easy. I think it's easy for human beings just to let things go and not expose it and not put themselves out. So the thing I find so inspirational about this is that you're putting it out there, you're helping people. I think that's why one of the functions of us being humans, and maybe it's goes back to the theme that we've kind of expounded on, which is wisdom and age and being around long enough to know, you
Mhm.
can sit on all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? What kind of, because it's all about ripples, you could unintendedly create a ripple that could just be a good thing. So anyway, again, thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you.